This is the interview Donald Miller doesn't usually give, not the framework around StoryBrand, the man actually behind it.
And I broke one of the rules that I'm literally talking to you about today.
The most important element of any messaging campaign is actually the negative, not the positive. Why? Every CEO thinks their product is the story. Every marketing director thinks being clever is the strategy. And every brand wonders why sales aren't converting.
I think reading my eulogy every morning has cost me tens of millions of dollars.
Donald Miller spent years obsessing over why stories work, studying screenwriters, writing memoirs. Then he did something nobody expected. He turned it into a marketing framework, and it changed how companies talk to customers forever.
We simply rewrote his product descriptions, simply rewrote them.
Just using different words.
Using different words. No advertising, no design changes, and he saw a 400% increase in total sales of his company.
That is fascinating. In this episode, it's not just about the StoryBrand framework. It's about the leader that grew this, the pivots he made, and some of the challenges he faced to grow a multi-million-dollar business. This is episode 29 of Anatomy of a Brand. I'm Chris Cruz, and this is my conversation with StoryBrand CEO, Donald Miller. Donald Miller on the podcast. Okay, this is a surreal moment. I've already been hyping you up. That's what I wanted to do, is just hype you up, coming onto the podcast to be a hype man for you. But I've followed your work, like I said before, for a really long time. Even one of your books, A Million Miles in 1,000 Years, when you were writing memoirs, I remember a part of it that was this phrase. I think you biked across the U.S., right? It was for a nonprofit though. You were doing it for charity water.
Yeah, it was a charity water nonprofit.
Okay.
Yeah, we were raising money to drill wells.
Okay, and I remember you saying like, what's the book? Kind of the premise of like, what's the story you're going to live like? And this moment for me, like, there's a part of me that read that book and was like, what's the story I want to tell about my life later on? And it made me even make some like pivot choices how I look at life and how I look at what I want to do. Do I want to live a story worth telling? Like, what's the adventures I want to go on and live my life? But then you built out a whole world that became StoryBrand. And some people are familiar with it that listen to the show, others aren't. But StoryBrand brought such I would say one way could be disruptive, but also just a new beacon for how companies can get clear on stuff. It was just a framework that was like, wait a second, this is both so simple, but yet so profound. And you developed this framework from all the different history of writing and knowing story. But if we were to give a flyover for people, what is the StoryBrand framework? How do you articulate it now as it stands today?
Well, yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on.
Yeah.
You're a delightful presence. I had written so many memoirs years ago and had studied story and story structure to write those, just to be a better writer.
I think I bought books that you recommended that I couldn't ever get through.
Probably so.
Like Robert McKee.
Robert McKee.
Like that book, I was like, man,
Christopher
I don't get
Booker,
through it.
Blake Snyder. It's the same guys. Joseph Campbell. So I'd done that, and I'd become just sort of obsessed. I think every writer has a bit of an OCD kind of fixation with ideas that they can't stop thinking about, and then
going.
Yeah, it's sort of a necessary characteristic. And I had been obsessed with story for years. Gone to Robert McKee seminars, wrote a screenplay with a group of guys, and one of the things that always fascinated me was that 30% of the time, the human brain is usually daydreaming. So it's checked out, and that's actually a survival mechanism because your brain burns a lot of calories to process information, and if there's nothing in your immediate environment that you need to process to survive, your brain will literally say, "Hey, let's daydream."
Let's daydream. Kick into gear.
Yeah, Your brain. The primary task of your brain is to keep yourself alive, and if there's nothing that in your immediate environment, a relationship, information, whatever that you need to survive, your brain will daydream. The only thing that can stop it from daydreaming is narrative. So if you sit down to watch a movie or if somebody starts into a story, your brain will wake up from its daydream and it'll pay attention, regardless of whether the information or the story is about your survival. And that to me was just always kind of fascinating. And not only that, we have a longing for story. We go see movies and they're just stories, and we will prop up if you're like me, you'll prop up your laptop, in bed. And my wife and I just finished the Agatha Christie series, 7 Dials, which is fantastic, by the way, for sharing Netflix recommendations. But
please do. We'll go through all of them.
Yeah, we should.
Let's do it.
That's a 5-episode series.
Yeah.
But so that fascinated me. The second thing that fascinated me was that stories are formulaic and they are very, very structured. And down if you're writing a screenplay to the minute or to the page, that by page 3 you have to have an inciting incident. By page, by page 37 or whatever, there's a mid-act climax. Just things like this.
Yeah.
That was thing number 2 that fascinated me. And then the more I studied it, the more I realized, there's other things you can do with story besides just tell stories. Mm-hmm. You could actually take a corporate message and filter it through the elements of story to get people to pay attention to a business. I didn't even own a business, but I'd been hired by Accenture to do some thought work around project management, and kind of laid over all the stuff I'd learned about story on how to get employees to engage around a process. This was when Continental and United Airlines were merging, and they were working on that. And so, and then I worked on that for years, and then thought, this is actually an interesting marketing and messaging framework. I had written 7 or 8 memoirs. I didn't have anything else to write in that category. People say, why'd you switch? We missed those. And I'm literally like, because nothing else has happened.
You're like, I'm not biking across the country again.
Yeah. I'm in my late 40s. This is like this. Just everything just kind of slows down. Mm-hmm. So I decided to write a book about. I had a conference company, and I used the StoryBrand framework, which didn't have a name at that point, to do this, to come up with sound bites that invited people into a story in which they would attend my conference in order to win the day. It's very formulaic, but that more than quadrupled the number of people who came to my conference without spending any money on advertising. It was just literally the way I was wording the invitation.
Can I ask you just a question right there? Because
I
know we're going to dive into all these things, but when we're even as an agency running one while we're building this podcast, people will interact with us around messaging. And you're saying just messaging alone has the potential to change how you attract customers and turn it into revenue. Like you're saying, like the way you say things matters.
Yes. And I've seen it over and over. In fact, I'm thinking of my friend David, who has a company called Mara Labs, and they make supplements. He can get like 1,000 pieces of broccoli into a pill, that kind of thing, And exactly. And we simply rewrote his product descriptions, simply rewrote them.
Using different words.
Using different words. No advertising, no design changes, and he saw a 400% increase in total sales of his company.
That is fascinating.
And it was partly because we rewrote those product descriptions to invite the customer into a story, but it was also partly because his product descriptions were actually confusing. And we wrote them in such a way where you could understand why you should even buy this. Yeah. And those to me are the low-hanging fruit. Like when a client comes to me and says, hey, we really want you to help us. Yeah. I'll look at their stuff, and if it's confusing, I'll say, okay, there's no question we can help you. Because all we have to do is actually say, it's a really good cheeseburger. And you're going to sell a lot more cheeseburgers. Yeah. Sometimes it's not very hard.
You're like, it's right there. It's like we're just right changing the words. And so you noticed that for your conference, and you built out this framework which goes through these different kind of almost stages of an act or a story arc. It has all these different elements.
It definitely parallels 2,500 years of storytelling, best practices, if you will. And part of it is, like, to summarize it, there's 7 categories of sound bites, is the language I use, that you need to come up with. First is identify what your customer wants, because they're the hero in the story. So if I were writing a screenplay, I would need to know that my protagonist wants to marry his high school sweetheart. Now we have a movie. The team wants to win the national championship. Now we have a movie. The single or group protagonist needs to want something. And the rules, if you're writing a screenplay, is it has to be one thing, not many, and it has to be clear and not vague. So they can't want to live their potential. They have to want to win the high school basketball tournament. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It cannot be vague.
Yeah, you can't be like, I want to actualize myself. You're like,
it doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
I want to break my father's record in the shot put at the Olympics. Now we have a movie. So what we learned there with that particular soundbite is most companies don't actually clearly articulate what it is that their customers want. They don't know.
And do you think that's because they they focus on themselves. Like
a lot of it is you're focused on yourself. There's other mistakes that you can make, like, well, if I'm broad and vague, I can catch more customers. You know, I had a kid once say to me, Don, I've got a dog training business. And he was working his way through college. And he said, how can I grow this while I'm working my way through college? And I said, I don't want you to say that you're a dog trainer anymore. Here's what I want you to say. Have you ever been in a house where somebody knocked on the door and the dog started barking incessantly? And if you've ever had that experience, I, by the way, have a dog that does that, and it's your blood pressure goes up, the person feels on what, you can feel it. Even as I say this, there are listeners going, oh man, yeah, that's annoying. Yeah. And then I say, I want you to ask that question, and if they say yes, because everybody has been in that house, even if it's not their house, you say, I'm a dog trainer, I fixed that problem. And I guarantee you will double in business when you actually solve the dog barking at the door problem more than if you solve the dog barking at the door, teaching a dog to heel, teaching a dog not to use the restroom in the house. Yeah. You will get more business when you are specific. And by the way, you can solve that one problem and then explain later, well, I can also teach this dog to heel, because now you're in the door and you're, that sort of thing. So
so good. It's so good.
And there was there was a window cleaner that said, Don, we want to grow our window cleaning business. What do I do? I said, put on a business card these words: look out the nearest window. If it's dirty, call this number. We will clean it. And that's it. Like, just don't overthink this. That's all you have to do, and you will grow your business, because we call it zero cognitive load. Yeah. You've got to explain what you do in such base, simple, primitive language that nobody has to burn a single mental calorie in order to understand.
Yep.
I use the example sometimes in politics. Now, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I've worked in a Democratic White House, and I've helped Republicans on the presidential side. But if you look at somebody like Donald Trump, whose border policy is build a wall, and somebody like Jeb Bush, who wrote a book about immigration. He wrote a book, and he's up against a bumper sticker, and the bumper sticker won. Mm-hmm. That should tell you something about people's willingness to think in nuance or understand the artistic direction that your advertising has gone as you express yourself to the world through your business, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know, and so simplicity of messaging is really important.
Truth be told, it's kind of embarrassing to say this, but the amount of times that I have done my elevator pitch in my head, listening to go, Don would tell me this. Don would say, it's not clear. You need to be simpler, 30 seconds. So like, the frameworks you offer are really that practical.
Well, to be fair, it's also very hard. One of the reasons that I think I have job security is because, I always say StoryBrand is the only company I can't help. Because when you're so close to what you do, you're too close to it. You understand it too well. Yeah. You have trouble simplifying it, and you think people understand even 5% of what you understand, and they don't. And
you have that bias of like, I live and breathe this every day. The knowledge I have messes with my ability to articulate this well. Like, I struggle with it where I'm like, oh, I'm using all this shop talk that no one cares about.
Yeah, that's exactly
They're like, no one actually cares. No one says any of these words when you talk to them. No. I say them because I'm like, that's the air I breathe. But they could care less about that. So it's almost insulting to yourself, but you have to deal with it.
If you have a baker who uses ancient grains and that doesn't trigger gluten allergies and these sort of things, I will smoke that bakery with a really good cookie as my tagline. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and I think we're just overthinking it. And somebody says, no, you won't. I mean, if they have ancient grains, can you point to one bakery that has ever used anything like that to grow?
Crumble cookie.
Yeah,
like guys,
that's
they're
it.
Smoking
you're
everybody.
You're gonna get smoked by somebody who just says best cookie in town. And literally, there are people right now who disagree with me but can't point to an example.
Yeah,
and I would say no. Now. Ancient grains and all that kind of stuff, make that your secondary messaging. I'm not saying that's not important messaging, but it's not your primary messaging. So back to the framework, you have to identify what a customer wants, and it needs to be clear. Then you have to identify the main challenge that is triggering them
This is a part that I've struggled with at times, to be honest, because there's like 3 different layers.
It's the most important.
Yeah, it's the one I feel like I
The problem
miss.
soundbite is by far the most important soundbite.
Hit us with this, double down here.
Because human beings only spend money, they only cast votes, they only get out of bed to solve a problem. It's the primary motivation of all human behavior is problem solving. And by the way, the human brain is an unbelievable problem solving machine. If you don't have a problem to solve, you will invent one. You will. You will find something to worry about. And there's one reason for that. It's because the brain is designed to keep you alive. And if it's designed to keep you alive, all it is interested in is threats.
And because what my brain does when I hear that is I think in the sense of like goals as well, where I go, it sounds similar to the idea that even society will tell me what I need to be doing, goals I need to achieve, or problems I need to solve. If I don't choose anything for my life, society has no problem trying to direct my life and give me some kind of problem to solve if I don't get traction in my life. And
it'll even agitate problems that don't exist, which is what politicians do all day long. They agitate problems that don't exist in order to get you to vote for them to solve that problem. And then, by the way, they don't solve the problem because they've solved the problem. You won't vote for them. This is a problem in DC. But but what I'm saying is like these are tactics people use in order to make money or get votes or
to change
power.
To move human behavior. To go like we're trying to get people to an outcome. We're trying to change and interact with human behavior towards whether I need to sell you a product or I'm trying to get you to join my cause. But I have found, like, when I've gone through the StoryBrand framework over and over again with so many different ways, wireframing websites, we're using it, all the different ways. When I get to this problem, that first stage of, all right, the character wants this. Next stage, what's the problem that they have? I wrestle because I have the like existential problem, the big, Star Wars good versus evil. Then I have the like these, and I don't know which. Honestly, that's where I struggle the most is going, which problem do I pick? Like, how do I pick one? How do I pick? That's the problem I solve.
And I usually tell clients we need to A/B test because ultimately the problem that you want to focus on for the next decade is the one that gets the biggest human response.
So it's not even with me. It's more so like what does the market feedback to me?
I actually, as the writer of the book, I don't know which problem you should. I'm not always right. So you A/B test these things, and for some reason, people are responding to this. And I've made a lot of mistakes too, where I'll skin a website that just says, do you want to take your business from 100,000 to 500,000, and then discover that's actually not the problem. They really just want to be they're lonely. And they want to be in a room with other business leaders, and then I'll reskin the website and say, well, let's focus on that problem, and we get a ton of people interested. So you have to constantly. The rule though is you can only choose one. That each product or each brand can really only choose one problem because the human brain can't figure out a complicated narrative in a short period of time. And usually in advertising and marketing, you've got milliseconds to capture somebody's attention. So you have to identify the problem. And then the third pillar is you position yourself as the guide in the customer story. And the guide is a character in stories because guides are characters in life. Yoda is a guide. Obi-Wan Kenobi is a guide. Mary Poppins is a guide. Haymitch in Hunger Games is a guide. Mary Poppins is a guide to George Banks, the hero of the story. So there's this character that exists in life, Mr. Miyagi. I'm dating myself with all these like 1990s references, but you want to position your brand as the guide to the hero. And the reason is there's several. The guide is the strongest character in the story. The hero is the second weakest. And so when we position our brand as the hero of the story, we're literally positioning our brand as a weak character in the story. And weakness is a survival liability. And strength is a survival asset. So you really want your brand to be strong and competent. And also you want your brand to be completely and totally about the customer.
Their success, their journey. Like, I'm trying to get you to be somewhere incredible.
Obsessed. Yeah, and that's hard to do because intuition and our own survival instincts want to make the story about us. But it's actually counterintuitive. The more you make the story, if you're a brand, the more you make the story about the customer, the better you survive.
And that makes sense too, because like we've had others on the podcast that we were talking about storytelling and the ways that people almost once storytelling became even a little bit of like a part of the marketing framework, ways that you look at brand, looking at story, they'll go, well, let me tell my origin story. And I'm like, that story is not,
Exactly,
don't tell that story. That story is not worth anything. It actually is kind of boring and like not
It's going to
worth
hurt
it.
you.
Yeah. They feel like, no, but I've got to tell my story. That's how I'm going to show up as me. And you're like,
I use all brands and all marketing is really fundamentally about building relationships, and you're getting to know people. And so whenever I'm in a classroom or there's a bunch of people in the room, if there's a bunch of ladies in the room, I'll say, hey, have you ever been on a date with a man who talked about himself the entire time? And of course, every woman is shaking her head, and she's got stories to tell. Yeah. And then I'll ask a second question: are you married to him? And the answer is no, you're not.
That's so good. Yes,
you're not.
Yes.
And so when people say, I want to tell my story, I say, let me remind you of some primitive thinking here. You really want to listen. And here's what's interesting.
Yes, hit me.
Ask the same woman. If you went out a few times with a man who did not tell, every time you asked him about himself, he spun it to ask about you again. Or he answered so shortly to get out of it and answer. By the fourth date, what did you want to know more than anything in the world? You wanted to know his story.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And here's why. Because people who talk about themselves incessantly, we see these people as weak. And we actually subconsciously see them as survival liabilities. And a woman is actually looking for a survival asset in a man. She's looking for strength. She's looking for character. She's looking for humility, because humility will serve her. And she's going to be in a very vulnerable state at some point in her life, especially if she has children.
Yeah.
So that's what she's looking for. He is also, by the way, looking for a survival asset. He's looking for somebody who believes in him, somebody who will say, you are respected and you're worthy of my attention. We're both really looking for survival assets. So what happens when I make it all about me and tell my story, she senses you are a survival liability and I am not safe with you. And so her instinct, it's not a narcissistic instinct. It's actually quite a sophisticated survival instinct. And I would tell any woman that, like, if he talks about himself, if he gets you talking about you, you might have found somebody here.
Yeah. Wow.
Because he has it takes a strength of character to be able to think about somebody else while I also need to survive.
Yeah.
And so I think brands need to kind of emulate that.
So good.
That attitude.
So
and there are
good.
brands who do it. Ritz-Carlton does it.
Yes.
Chick-fil-A does it.
Yes.
There are brands, and those brands, we think of those brands as strong. I would say Chick-fil-A is a $22.3 billion a year organization. I would say if they weren't as other focused, which they've actually defined as second mile service. They have a definition and a playbook for how they do it.
Wow.
And I would say without that playbook, they're an $11 billion organization. That literally 50% of their sales come from positioning themselves as the guide.
Wow.
Because people see anybody who affirms their identity and anybody who listens to their story, they see that brand, that literal brand, as a survival partner. And to help them affirm their identity. This
is fascinating.
There's 3 different psychological studies on this. And they would all come to the conclusion that all human beings have a character in their mind that they believe they can be. And they are always pursuing that character. And any brand who affirms that they are anything like that character, they see that as a survival asset.
That feels
and
so
they
in line.
They want to partner with that brand.
It feels so in line with even like
your
Seth
friends. Think about who your friends are. They're the people who help you out.
Yeah. Well, because it's funny because like when I read, I think I'm getting the title right from Seth Godin's book, All Marketers Are Liars, and it's crossed out storytellers. And it's like this idea of what's the story you're telling yourself that this brand has now gone and said, we're going to affirm that. You're right to believe that story.
You're right about you.
Yeah, you're right about you. You're like, now I have affinity, even if their product is not superior to other people's products. Because you'll have people say, I have the best product, I should win. You're like, I'm so sorry. That's
It
not
doesn't work that way.
Yeah, not anymore. So when you're going through this process, you built StoryBrand. The framework is very accessible. There's lots of what you've communicated it so effectively. You have even your StoryBrand 2.0 book that came out. You have this framework. If people are hungry to deep dive into that framework, it's available for them. What I wanted to do, and selfishly with getting time with you, was I know that you've had evolutions of your own company. As you've built, you had Business Made Simple, you started to develop that, and you developed other Coach Builder and different things. I wanted to ask you as a CEO, as you're building things, what are the things you're doing with your own brand that you're recognizing? Like, my first question is around this idea of what has been one of the hardest decisions you've had to make for the brands and the companies you lead recently? Like, you're like, this is one of the hardest ones I've had to do.
Well, I would say I've made a lot of mistakes, a lot more mistakes than anything I've gotten right. And I've gotten some things right. So it's been a very humbling journey. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, every year seems to be better than the last. And so somehow we keep plodding forward. But I think one of the mistakes that I made was I started a company called StoryBrand, and that blew up. And so now I was managing a lot of people, and I created a framework to manage those people. Mm-hmm. And so I started a division called Business Made Simple to teach those frameworks. Okay. And just in doing that, I broke one of the rules that I'm literally talking to you about today. I'm trying to become known for two things. And that's a very difficult thing to do. So what I do now is when I start something new, I literally start a new LLC. We start new books. I find a partner who has equity in that division. Wow. And I stay focused on StoryBrand. And they help me build, something else because, my mind wants to create new things, and there's more. And I have more solutions than just one. But I would warn everybody out there that, I am more in favor of being a house of brands than a branded house. Normally, usually, that's not always the case. Yeah. And certainly, if you go into like a Publix or a grocery store, it's got to be half of those products really belong to about 8 different companies. Yeah, you're right. But they're all run like different businesses and different products, and they're separated. Yeah. You don't say, well, if you love Head and Shoulders, you'll also love Rice Krispies. That's not how you think of it.
Your dandruff is really going to work well.
Exactly. Last thing you want is dandruff in your cereal. So, they separate those things. And that goes back to the rule of a customer can want one thing, and they can have one problem, and they can have one guide. That's just how the mind works.
So how did you reflect on that? Like, how did you, was the companies not going the way that you wanted them to go?
The companies were actually doing well. They were doing well, but my StoryBrand certified guides didn't like that I was spending time with coaches and teaching coaches these other frameworks. And at one point, I actually changed the name of StoryBrand certified guides to StoryBrand certified coaches because I wanted them to all get along. Yeah. And that was a critical mistake. Critical mistake.
How did you find that out? Were people just like
I found it out because there was some tension. There was some people sort of saying, hey, he didn't ask us. Well, there's problem number one. Who was the hero there? I was the hero, and I wasn't listening to the customer. Wow. So that was very, very humbling. Wow. And I had to do an apology tour and go around and say, hey, I'm so sorry for changing that name, but I'm not really sorry for changing the name. I'm sorry for not listening to you, because if I would have just had a conversation with you, I would have never done that. And thankfully, my StoryBrand certified guides are incredibly, forgiving and generous. And there's something powerful about it. But how can you not be though when you're trained in culture to see CEOs not do that? When you witness it, when you're trained to go, executives they don't apologize. They don't do that kind of work. They're not that human-centered approach. And then you finally get one that your heart's actually been craving. To have that kind of interaction, you're like, oh my gosh. It's counterintuitive.
It is.
Because we think we need to be strong. I've just always found that no matter what the data says, no matter what studies show, if you just do what God wants you to do, you're going to be all right. And so I try to remember that. But I would say that was a big mistake. And now we literally separate the teams, separate the books, separate the websites, separate the all of that, and that tends to go better. Okay,
so now inside of that, I'm going for that inside baseball, trying to understand it, because I've been such an outside observer for so long and learning and watching, because I'll learn from your content, from took the courses, Business Made Simple, all that stuff. And then I'll listen to you do those live interviews at times or these live sessions. And I'm watching your podcast go, StoryBrand, Business Made Simple. Then there was a switch to Why This Works, I think it was.
Why that worked.
Why it works. And
which did not work. Think of the irony there.
Okay, that's what I wanted to I wanted to find out a little bit of like, as someone who's like, is very much in Patrick Lencioni's like working genius. It's like, I am a inventor and galvanizer, ideas and rallying people to them. So it's hard for me to restrain my ideas.
Yeah, you and I are similar.
Okay, so then I'm seeing you do these things. I'm like, I probably would make those same choices, but would he call those mistakes or would he call them, they worked? Like, I wanted to know because I'm like, I think I'd make those same mistakes. I got 4 podcast changes I want to make, but maybe I shouldn't do it because I'm looking at you on the outside going, he's changed them. What is his thoughts now?
And now we're back. We're back to the StoryBrand podcast, and it will be that way forevermore.
Okay, so walk me through that. Walk me through how you're identifying that mistake and you're like, it didn't work, but why?
We call them mistakes. They're really just at bats, right? They're really just super like, fair. Let's try this, and I do believe that your instincts can guide you to some degree, and you and I both probably have something in common that we test ideas in the marketplace rather than in the lab.
Yes.
And I don't really have a problem with that. So it's hard to see that as a mistake as much as it was a learning curve.
Totally.
I think everybody I've known who has supposedly won the lottery with an idea or a product, you start digging, you start talking to them, and it was the 37th iteration of something. And then, boy, you came out of nowhere, and the guy's like, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah. Yes. They're like, oh, wait, this is a rebuilt company that was once
that's exactly,
nothing, and it got I'm like,
that's exactly it.
It's so true.
Yeah. And, you even think about it doesn't even, you don't even have to look long at, even Amazon. I mean, Jeff Bezos would say he's had 2 hits. Wow. He's had 2 hits, and that's it. Amazon Prime and Amazon Web Services.
Most people don't even understand Amazon Web Services to even call it a hit.
Right, but we're all paying the money every month, totally. Though, I guarantee you that.
Like the cash cow, they're like, oh, it's the Amazon Marketplace. I'm like...
Yeah, but remember Amazon Fire? Remember the Amazon phone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We wouldn't say he's dumb, the richest man in the world, arguably. So I think that's just one of the things you have to get comfortable with.
The R&D nature of like how you are versus. So, but at one point you had to be able to say, in this, you're like, okay, this learning has pointed to a different outcome and we've got to change it. What was that learning moment that you're like, I saw that and it's not the outcome I'm wanting, or it's not that I'm going to pivot the podcast to this or to that? Was it because your new products you were offering, or is it?
If it's not working, you need to abandon it fairly quickly. I would not. Okay. There's a term called sunk cost, where people tend to chase bad decisions and they tend to chase bad investments because their ego wants to fix it. And I would just say, check your ego at the door. It's not working. Let's change. So the hardest thing for me, just as a leader, is walking into the room when I've rallied my entire team around something and they've gotten used to it, and say, hey, we're not going to do that anymore, and run the risk of looking flaky or like I changed my mind all the time. And because not everybody's wired that way. Not everybody's wired to be able to pivot and move quickly. And so you're asking people to do something that's sort of counter to their nature.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. It's not actually pivoting. That part I do all day long.
Like I feel like I'm like, oh, just change it, not realizing the ramifications for all others that don't change like that.
Well, also, if you're like me, you don't even remember your mistakes. You don't even remember your failures. My wife reminds me all the time, but I'm like, I have no recollection of that ever happening.
like that was last week. You're like,
yeah.
What was last week?
And there's a lot of studies that show that success is more correlated with the number of at-bats you take than anything else.
So,
There's how many times you try.
All right. So for a person built like you that has this ability to pivot, think new ideas, but yet StoryBrand has endured inside of your ethos for a long time, do you have to overcome any kind of boredom?
No.
No,
which to me is that's a sign.
Okay.
I mean, Gosh, just last week I was in Atlanta in front of a bunch of real estate agents delivering the StoryBrand keynote for probably, I would think it's got to be 500, between 500 and 1,000 times.
You're at a rep that's unheard of.
Yeah, it was as though it was the first time.
No way.
No, I'm not making that up. I absolutely love it.
You feel like at the same time, you're like, this, is it because
I can give that keynote for the rest of my life. And I've never gotten tired of it. I'll never get tired of it. I also never get tired of somebody saying, well, here's my tagline. Do you think it's good? And I'll say, no, I think you should actually say this. And I'll say it differently. It's just, it's kind of like saying, do you ever get tired of like jigsaw puzzles? Like if you like jigsaw puzzles, you're just going to like them forever.
You're just going to love it.
Yeah, you're just going to love it.
There's a flow state that you get into that like, there's a book, Flow, The Optimizing of Human Experience.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah, it's a fascinating book.
He's an Asian author. What's his name?
I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's one of those, he might be Russian.
Might be.
But it's a name that I could not pronounce. It's really difficult. But he talks about that state of when you are achieving a task that is hard enough for you to be mentally stimulated to where you're not bored, but not too hard to where you get anxiety.
Right.
And then you're able to go, all right, I feel this bettering of me in that process, and I come out the other side a more complex, better person, achieving a goal. You're in this, everything kind of disappears still for me doing this. You're like, I love doing it, which is, for me, I'm like, oh, that is fascinating because you've been doing this for a long time. Mm-hmm. And
it's going on 10 years now.
Yeah.
Well, StoryBrand, I think, StoryBrand was around long before the book came out.
Because if you go to
the book's been
Storyline,
about 9 years.
Yeah.
I think I was teaching StoryBrand a few years before that.
Okay, so now my other question then in this process, you're building out, you're doing these things. If you were to look back on, how would you describe what you're most proud of, and as you're building these things? Like, what are the things you're like, man, I'm really proud of this?
Well, I mean, it's not just a pat answer, but I'm proud that I got married late and became a dad late. So I'm proud that I have a daughter who knows my name, and I don't leave more than usually more than one night a month. This month it's 3, so I'm feeling guilty about even saying that. But that's the thing that that's what life is really about, right? Mm-hmm. Everything else is just fundraising. Mm-hmm. But I think if I had a contribution in the long run, there's a business framework out there that will probably be recognized after I'm gone. Yeah. And not everybody gets lucky that way, and I feel like I got lucky.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
Even though it's a 2,500-year-old framework, and all I did was turn it into a marketing framework.
I tried to read Joseph Campbell, and I'm a reader. I tried to read Joseph Campbell.
He's not my inspiration.
It was really hard.
It's really Blake Snyder and Robert McKee.
Okay. Because that one was a hard one to pull through.
Yeah, it is. And look, he's dead on. He's on to something there. Yeah. Joseph Campbell's on to something. I don't tend to agree with his outcome as a man of deep faith, but he certainly recognizes that there's something primitive in the human spirit that story is pointing toward. Yeah.
Wow. So do you, in this journey, in Business Made Simple, I remember you talking about it. I've heard you talk about it many times. I wanted to kind of engage with you on it. You still read is it your obituary, or what is it?
My obituary. Read it this morning.
Okay, that is a fascinating tactic to motivate you to pull, unpack that a little bit.
Well, it's an old strategy. Stephen Covey recommends it in 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
I didn't know that.
Michael
I've read that. I didn't even remember that.
Recommends doing it. Stephen Covey got it from somewhere else.
Okay.
But the idea is that you sit down and you write your obituary as though you were hearing it at your own funeral. And you write it, so you have control over what that obituary is. And it's a way of reminding yourself about what David Brooks calls the eulogy virtues. David Brooks divides the eulogy virtues and the resume virtues. The resume virtues tend to be what we think about all the time, and the eulogy virtues are what actually matter. And for whatever reason, it's very hard for us day to day to think about what really matters, taking a little more time with somebody, being altruistic, having character, staying humble in the face of success. These are the things that actually matter. Our drive, our survival instinct says get money, beat the competition, those kinds of things, which often contend with the eulogy virtues. So it's a tactic to write your obituary and try to read it every morning to sort of recalibrate yourself. So when I read my eulogy virtues, it reminds me that Donald Miller was a great dad. That one of my goals, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter. One of my goals, and it's in my obituary, is that my daughter would never see me holding a phone.
Wow.
Now she has roughly 1,000 times, but that's my goal.
Yeah, you're going. You're like, I got a lot more life here.
But to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
And I would say probably my daughter has seen me hold a phone less than most folks.
Wow.
Because it hits the key bowl when I walk through the door, and I don't pick it up until she goes to bed.
Wow.
But there's it just reminds you of to me, reading your eulogy that you wrote every morning or every morning that you can, reminds me of the things that I will regret. And that's very hard to hold in your brain, is like, you're going to regret not responding to this letter that somebody wrote you. You're going to regret talking to your wife this way. You're going to regret playing the victim or thinking of yourself as a victim in this situation. You're going to regret that. And it just takes a really gentle reminder to recalibrate your moral compass. And so, but what's amazing is you say, well, Don, why do you have to read it every day? Because literally I forget 24 hours later. I literally read it and I go, oh yeah, I want to be a good dad. And 24 hours later, oh yeah.
Like, that's right. That's right.
I want to be a good husband.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Wow, here we go. Remember this.
That's more about my ignorance than the human brain.
It's the human experience, I think, as well. Oh my gosh. But I think what I find fascinating about that is it points to a internal awareness and building of your internal world that helps you with all that you're doing in your companies. I don't look at that, and some people may go, oh, that's really interesting that Don does that for his life, and that's really fun that it makes him a good dad and a good husband. But I'm going, those things are so connected to his success in business as well. And I think that virtue, that awareness, that development, I think, especially when I interact with people I see these like rising influencers that create brands but are lacking a depth. They have an incredible product that they figured out even, and they've gotten notoriety really quickly, but they've never sat down and done that. Yeah. And I'm going, oh, there's something here for people who are building brands to start to think about how your internal world impacts what you're building. And am I right to say that there's a part of you that says that this makes you a better entrepreneur knowing that?
I don't know if it makes me a better entrepreneur. It depends on how you measure that.
Okay, fair.
I mean, I would say there are people who I watch, contemporaries who I've gotten to know, who are all younger than me.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know for a fact they will deeply regret the way they are living. And there's nothing I can do to help them understand that. But you get these kids for a season and you are wasting it.
Wow.
You're on the road and you're proving, what you are doing is you're trying to heal a father wound through success. And you're creating another father wound in your child. And I know it, and they can listen to me right now, and they will know it, and they can't. And then I think, well, if I hadn't become a dad at 49, I would be them. There's zero question in my mind because I'm such a driven person that if I had become a dad in my 20s, I think my daughter would spend a lot more time with a therapist. She's probably going to have to do that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, my kids are definitely spending it. I was like, I'm starting the fun now. I'm like, the therapy fund is going there. College won't exist.
And by the way, let me also say, just to anybody who hears that and is convicted by that, repair can heal those wounds in your kids. So, to be able to go back and just sit down and say, hey, your dad really screwed up, and I'm so sorry, and I think some of the feeling of abandonment is actually coming from me, and will you forgive me? That can heal a ton of, so, it's not a lost cause, but I am saying.
No, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, so, but I don't know that, listen, I think reading my eulogy every morning has cost me tens of millions of dollars.
Whoa, unpack that. Like, that's like, what do you mean?
I mean, the laws of business are the laws of business. And, if you are on it and you are focused and you are ruthless about the people who work with you are A players and you get rid of B players and you are ruthless about beating the competition and you have some ethical gray area about suing some folks
Yeah.
and getting them out of the
Yeah.
market, you're going to make more money.
Wow.
And that's just a fact, and you see it sort of everywhere. The question is, again, your business also has eulogy virtues and resume virtues.
Let's go.
I think the businesses
Let's
that
go.
participate in the transformation of their customers and affirm their identity, I think they make great money. I think they make plenty of money, and I think the CEOs of those companies sleep well at night. And capitalism. I'm a huge fan of capitalism. There's never, ever in the history of the world been a more successful exercise in reducing poverty than capitalism. There's no ministry on this planet that can come anywhere close to it. So I'm a huge fan of that. But I think rampant, unguarded, unbridled greed is a destroyer of worlds, and certainly a destroyer of families and those sorts of things. So I want to sort of walk that line.
There's something inside of you that says you're willing to lose money for something. If
I
there's
think we all are, though. I think
Okay.
you're the same. I
Yeah.
think most everybody's the same. I think if somebody backed up a dump truck full of cash and said, "Hey, I want you to, I want you to help me sell this thing. Listen, it does cause cancer, but we've got some scientists who will kind of skew those numbers." You're not taking that money.
No, you're not taking that money.
So I think the question is can we take those lines of "I won't cross this" and maybe bring them a little bit back to the left, even more?
Yeah.
And,
absolutely.
And
Well, I think there's some kind of development of the internal person. Like you're saying, even you're saying the repair with your child, and you're I know exactly what you're talking about. That exercise, if I was simply to reduce it to an exercise, but it's much more than that. Being able to own a mistake, come back, clean that mistake up, repair that relationship. There's no way you're not able to do that then in a company with a team where you make mistakes. That training ground of being able to go, oh, I know how to own my mistake. I know how to see my mistake. I know how to know when I'm being defensive about my mistake. I know when my wife's going, you're not really looking at the true matter. Those things shape me as a person. Therefore, it makes me a better X, Y, or Z in a company. It's just, there's no way they don't. But it's when you compartmentalize your life and go, these don't touch. You're like, I think you're missing out on the way that life shapes you into a better person. But in your journey with all of this, as you've scaled companies, as you've started to, over a decade of doing this, trends change, markets change, things change. How have you had to pivot, even the StoryBrand framework? Is there a way that you're looking at companies now going, I know that we kind of sold the product this way before, but we got to sell the product this way now. Is there anything that you're seeing that you're like, we need to pay attention?
That's every day. Every day, especially now. I mean, the world is changing faster than ever. It will not stop changing. It's relentless. It's brutal. I've been able to make the acquaintance and become friends of Charles and Chase Koch, and Georgia Pacific, and 1,000 other companies. And in fact, they are printing their book, The Principle Driven Leader, under StoryBrand Press. And
I didn't even StoryBrand Press existed.
Because we have 3 books, and theirs will be the 4th. But one of the things that they highlight in their book is that in a world of relentless change, there are principles that just never change. They're the same, and they outline 41 of them in their book, The Principle Driven Leader, which isn't out yet. But I think it's instead of sort of looking at the world that won't change, I would actually look at the things that stay the same and focus on those. And narrative structures never change. The ability of stories to get attention never change. Some of the methodologies change, and you have to walk in the door of your building every morning and say, "Hey, what are we doing? How are we changing with the world?" And you have to be able to pivot and change with it. I mean, even in marketing, so much SEO is now going to AI instead
that's what I was going to ask.
Websites.
That's the natural question, right? Because even watching StoryBrand evolve and great StoryBrand AI and things like that, you're looking at a market that you're going, how does messaging still charge? In a world that people feel like everything is at their fingertips, because it is, so to speak, you're in this Renaissance era, but you're talking about messaging changing the trajectory of companies. There's a tool that can be utilized how are you addressing you? I know you developed.
Well,
StoryBrand.
at first we actually went with it and created StoryBrand AI.
Yeah.
That was an amazingly successful economic move for me.
Yeah. Okay.
It's still an amazingly successful lead generation move, but what we've discovered with AI is that it actually, I don't believe it's going to write as well as most human beings. And now I'm seeing, I can tell you when AI created a website. And I can tell you when one of my StoryBrand certified guides created a website. And there's a humanness to when a human does it that now I'm seeing, I'm coming back to the advantage of human beings doing it.
Wow.
And even human beings who are using AI and using it as a co-writer and editor and things like that, or market research, the stuff that it's really good at. So I think you just always want to kind of keep a pulse on what works and what doesn't work. And ultimately the market will tell you. And
don't you think, okay, so here's the conversations I get, and I have these moments where they'll say, yeah, Chris, you can recognize when people use AI, but a company doesn't care because for them it's cost effective. And for them, like, it doesn't really matter. Is there any state of you're going like, no, I think the human's actually going to sell better for you? Like,
well, certainly in person.
I'm going to turn a screen towards you and sell through this.
Yeah,
AI
I mean,
bot.
human beings are going to want to be together, and I think that's going to be more true in the future. So anything you can do to add a communal effect or a communal effect to your business, where you can bring people together, I think you should probably start launching those programs.
Dive into that deeper. Unpack what you're meaning there. Like,
I mean, for example, if you sold something to dentists and you added a community of dentists, regional community of dentists where they could get together, you probably should add that because the longing to be with other human beings, I think, is not going to go away. I'm amazed not at how much is changing with AI. I'm amazed at how much is staying the same because it is such an incredibly powerful tool.
Interesting.
And yet you look around and things are kind of just staying the same, and people aren't using it as much as they're using it, but it's not changing that. It's changing a lot, don't get me wrong. But the truth is AI could probably replace, I don't know, 40 million jobs right now that people are just choosing not to replace them. And I would suggest that's because we tend to cozy up to human beings a little more than our laptops, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, I don't know, I don't think it's going to change a lot. There's no question, and we can adapt with it.
Yeah.
But I think human beings are human beings, and human beings like other human beings.
So you said something that I wanted to double tap into. You said StoryBrand.ai was a good economic model. Now it's become a good lead engine. Like, what
It's still both. I mean, it's still a moneymaker and a lead generator.
Okay, so people can still charge for it.
Yeah.
So you still charge for it, but
it's cheap. It's like $50 a month.
It's 50. Did you get any kind of moment where you're like, okay, I'm creating this, and your coaches or anybody be like, what
do you think, Chris?
that was my wonder. I'm like,
well, let's move on to mistake number 2 and apology tour number 2.
I was like, I wasn't like in a bad way. I was more going like, I wonder, like, did that actually come up in that process with the coaches?
It did, and you know, my argument was it's actually going to help you because if you are a StoryBrand guide and you create websites and you create this marketing collateral, previously people just had a book. Now they have a book that's leading them to AI, and the AI is printing out the text of their website and the text of their lead generator and the text of their emails and that text. First of all, now they're not just reading a book, they're looking at a marketing campaign that has not been executed.
Yeah.
And so the number of people who understand what a StoryBrand marketing and messaging campaign is and have actually taken the first step in creating it exponentially increased. Okay. And we're still in need of a human being to put it exactly. That argument to my guides, it was still such a threat at the time that I think some of them, it was very difficult for them to, they wanted me to pretend that it didn't exist and go put the genie back in the bottle. Yeah. And
you can't do because it was going to happen regardless.
So I think some of the guides who were most threatened by that left, and the ones who embraced it, a lot of them went into the multiple 7 figures because they engaged the strategy. At the same time, I certainly, I don't like the world changing, and I think I could have done as a leader a much, much better job, much better job practicing diplomacy and creating focus groups and creating the product with my StoryBrand certified guides. I could have done a much, much, much better job with that. And so an apology tour, I think, was warranted there. But, morale right now is very, very high. Trust in our StoryBrand certified guides is
amazing.
Is high. I would actually say there's more of a demand for our guides after AI now than before AI. And so, and also I tell people they use AI, like they're using artificial intelligence. But listen, I mean, you're the same as me. I run a company. I don't care if you use AI. I don't have time to use AI to figure this stuff out. I'm running a business here. I'm not a marketing director. And so I hope that, in fact, I don't even know if I would hire, if you were anti-AI, I don't know that I would hire you. Because that's like saying, look, I'm a mathematician and we're going to put this rocket into space, but I got to tell you something. I don't use calculators. I'm like, okay, we're getting the guy who uses a calculator.
Let's get these precise numbers. We're not doing long division on this piece of paper right now.
Yeah, it sounds like more your ego than your desire to be accurate.
Fascinating. Okay, so I had this in my back pocket as like, okay, if I feel like we could go there, I want him to put him on the spot and ask his input on it. I have an idea for a product that we offer, and I wanted to be like, all right, I've got Don in front of me. I'm going to ask him what he thinks about this and have real-time feedback and go like, this was a crap idea, or like there's some legs to this, or now go back to refinement, which I'm open to all of the answers. There's no needing to make me feel good. So I'm running up against this hurdle where as we lead a branding agency, so we will execute on strategy. I'll back up like this. The story pitch I tell myself that I've worked on after doing all the different things is when people ask me what I do, which I used to hate that question, like, what do you do? And be like, well, and you just kind of go through the fumble over yourself. I said, well, I help people trust companies. Like
you help people trust companies. Okay.
And so like that's where when I just happen to call it branding. And I was like, but my job is to go, how do I get you to trust them in a way that you end up putting yourself potentially at a risk by choosing them, even if you don't know the outcome. So I'm like, I think about branding as like this trust experience. Like, how do I close that gap of you trusting them for an outcome? Like, can you?
Yeah. Can I give you a tip on the pitch?
Yes, please.
So you always want to start with the problem.
Okay.
So I would go one of two directions. I would actually have a statistic that's accurate.
Okay.
Something like, up to 70% of the consumers in America
I'll go back and listen to this.
Do not trust businesses to tell them the truth. Something that's very specific.
Love that.
And then I would say, I make sure that you're one of the brands that people trust. So you always want to start with the problem, because if you start with the problem, the solution has way more value.
Yeah.
But if you actually start with the solution is not framed against the contrast of a problem, and so it's perceived as less valuable.
Let's go.
I would actually go a different, even a different direction than that. And then, I might say...
I'm looking to double my revenue, so let's go.
I might say something like, consumers tend to spend a lot more money with brands that have built trust with them, but most brands don't know how.
Let's go.
I teach them how to build trust so that consumers actually engage them more than the competition.
Let's go.
So, there's a number of ways to frame the problem, but it's, again, the most important element of any messaging campaign is actually the negative.
The negative.
It's not the positive.
Creating that contrast moment.
It's creating the contrast. And I sometimes every few years or so, I'll teach a writing workshop at my house. And we have this kind of event space that we built behind the house so that I can be a better dad and not go on the road.
Named after your dog, is that right?
Goose Hill, yeah.
Okay.
Lucy Goose. Good research there. And there's about 1,000 books on the bookshelf in the carriage house. And I'll say to somebody, hey, just go pick up a book off the shelf. It doesn't matter. And they grab a book. I say, okay, open it to any page, put your finger down on any paragraph, and then they do that. And I say, let me tell you what that paragraph is about. That paragraph is about a character who is experiencing conflict. And then I say, read it. And they'll say, Harry Potter was.
That's awesome. That is awesome.
And I've never missed.
Never missed.
Now the truth is, it's about 80-20.
Yeah.
So at some point I'm going to miss. I'm going to go, okay, put your finger down somewhere else. But so far I haven't had to do that. The principle that I'm teaching is that interesting writing is almost all conflict. And even something like Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt or Tiz, anything by Steinbeck, anything by J.K. Rowling, open it up. It's very, very active language, lots of action verbs, lots of negativity. The reason is it engages the human brain because the human brain is a threat detecting machine. So it's much, much more attracted to negativity than positivity. So, but here's the great thing. People go, well, I don't want to be a negative brand. It's counterintuitive. The more negative you are, the more your solution is perceived as hopeful. So if I were to say, I remember a story when I was a kid, this young girl, I still remember her name, Jessica, she fell into a well in her grandparents' backyard in the state of Texas. And for 3 days, people tried to get her out of that well.
This is a real story?
Real story.
Okay.
This was back when there was like 4 channels on television, and everybody in the country was glued to their TV and trying to get Jessica out of that well. It was captivating. And at the end, these firefighters were able to dig through pieces and remove a rock and get down there. And I remember the footage of her coming out of that well. Now, let me ask you, Chris, did I just tell a hopeful story or a negative story?
Wow, yeah, totally.
Let me tell you how much of that story was positive.
Yeah.
1 second.
The end, right there.
And that's how you want to think of your branding.
Wow.
Your product is that moment where people don't have to struggle with this anymore. They don't have to not have trust. So for you to say, look, consumers trust corporations, which by the way is true.
Yeah.
A study just came out about 3 weeks ago.
Wow.
The trust for corporations and corporate leaders is at an all-time low. It's never been lower.
Wow.
And consumers are hopeless, they're cynical, and most consumers, I'm going to make up statistics, but we want these to be true. Most consumers can name no more than 2 brands that they actually trust.
Fascinating.
Trust is at an all-time low, and trust will actually cost you your business. You will go out of business if you don't know how to build trust.
Wow.
I help brands build trust.
Yeah.
So did you hear the end of it?
Yeah.
The end of it was Jessica came out of the well.
Yeah, 100%. I was tracking you.
And that's how you want, everybody listening, that's how you want to talk about your products.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Oh, my brain is spinning. I've got like 10 minutes left that I'm supposed to, or 5 minutes left or so. So here's the last thing I want to get your input on, which you already got my world spinning, is this idea of taking all of the services that we offer, right? So we do all of those things we offer. And what I'm running up against, right? The problem not the problem solving, the problem I'm having in closing clients, and that is they're dealing with the price points of things. Can they afford to do this, X, Y, or Z around if I do this design thing now and I need content later on, and it's just a cost, and who's going to implement this in my company? All of these elements of execution, implementation, and strategy. All of this.
Right.
I'm going, can I take all of that as what we do as an agency and go, I will be your entire in-house team for a certain price that's reasonable, whatever, and establish that as a subscription and go, we'll do anything that you need one at a time, but we're your in-house team for you would otherwise need $300,000 to do this. You're going to do this for $80,000 a year, $90,000 a year. And you get all of this in one subscription with us. Like, implementation, strategy, execution, all of that, and in a creative services way from a brand. Yeah,
you've done something really smart there. You've contrasted it or compared it to an in-house team that would cost them a lot more than $300,000. And I think my marketing team costs well over $300,000 a year. And if you were going to do all that, another thing that you'd want to do is I would actually put it all in a playbook with tabs. I'd put it in a leather-bound binder, and I would say, this is the playbook that we're going to take you through over the next 12 months. And by the way, when we're done, we're going to start back at the beginning. We're going to do it again. The cost of this is X. Let me tell you, this is my team. This person does this for you. This person does this. This person does this. There's something about removing the feel of a black box investment that makes people much more likely to make the purchase. And if you said, look, it's $300,000 and we do everything for you, what's everything?
What's everything? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what everything is.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's very, very important there is, as you keep doing this, you need case studies. So you need to say, let me send you 3 case studies on what happened when somebody bought this product, and we think you would parallel these. Yeah. And then another thing that builds trust. So you've got, let's talk about what you've got here. You've contrasted it against their cost if they did it a different way. Yeah. So now it's not a 3, you know, midlife crisis, right? I've been test driving these Porsche Boxsters. These Porsche Boxsters are sort of like the poor man's 911. They're basically go-karts. Okay. But they're not cheap. And I've test driven about 3 of them. I've not bought one. This is kind of how I do things. I've got the money. I just, you know, I grew up poor.
You like the process?
I don't know if I like the process. I wish I had the lack of guilt to just go buy it. All it would take is, and unfortunately, probably a Porsche dealer is listening to this. They're going to call me. All it would take is somebody saying, hey, Don, this is a $100,000 car. You are probably going to put about 4,000 miles a year on this car. So 3 years from now, this car has 12,000 more miles. Because these things hold their value, you'll be able to sell it 3 years from now for $3,000 less than you bought it. So you're talking about letting somebody have your 100 grand, getting 97 back 3 years from now. Add, you know, you account for inflation. That's probably about a $5,000 expense for 3 years of you just being able to blow off steam on the Natchez Trace.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy that Porsche.
Yeah, you're going to buy that Porsche.
And then I'm going to go home and say, hun, I've made a terrible mistake.
But I love I love how
you
you're
see what I'm saying?
that.
And what I'm saying is, don't make your customer think.
Yeah.
Don't make them think.
Yeah.
Do the math for them.
Yeah.
So one is do the math. Second, remove the black box investment by giving them the playbook. Third of those case studies where you're actually framing it as an investment. And then there's a fourth thing. I want you to tell the truth about somebody it didn't work for. And I want you to say, here's why it didn't work.
Love that.
And these characteristics are not true about your company. And not only that, we fixed in this and this. Yeah. I'm a firm believer that one, create a really, really great product, especially in business to business. You've got to make people money. We make our guides money. Yeah. And then put everything on the table and tell the absolute truth.
I love that so much.
But tell the truth very clearly and in such a way that they can see the wisdom of why they should say yes. And I think that's really all there is to it.
Gosh. Man, there it is. Thank you for being on the show today.
My pleasure. What a pleasure to meet you.